They say the forest is safe if you follow the rules. They're wrong. In Ridgefield National Forest, the person who's supposed to protect you might be the one hunting you. He wears the uniform, he carries authority, and he always knows where you are. By the time you realize it, you're already his next target. Ridgefield was the kind of small town where everyone knew everyone else, where the biggest news was a raccoon in the garbage or a teenager's stolen car. But at the edge of town, Ridgefield National Forest loomed like a silent giant, thick with trees, shadows, and secrets. Hikers, campers, and tourists came for the trails. Nobody thought twice about the uniformed figure patrolling the entrances. His name was Officer Kane, or at least that's the name on his crisp badge. To the townsfolk, he was the perfect ranger. Friendly, efficient, always smiling beneath his wide-brimmed hat and mirrored sunglasses. Nobody suspected the man behind the badge carried a darker purpose. I first noticed him on a late summer evening. My friends and I were coming back from a weekend camping trip. We'd taken the less-traveled trail through the northern section of the forest, the one with the old pine groves and the abandoned ranger cabin. We'd stopped to rest near a clearing when I saw him. Tall, silent, watching. He stood near the trailhead, perfectly still in his ranger uniform, as if waiting. Not waving, not greeting. Just standing, a shadow in the fading sunlight. At first, I thought it was another park visitor. But something about the way he didn't move, the way his mirrored sunglasses caught every glint of sunlight, made my stomach twist. Probably just some new ranger, I said to my friends. But something about that statement sounded hollow even to me. We shrugged it off and continued down the trail. The forest was quiet, almost unnaturally so. No virzon. No wind in the trees. Just the crunch of leaves under our boots. That night, in the cabin, we laughed and joked about the creepy forest ranger. Thinking it was all in my head. I was wrong. The next day, one of the campers didn't come back from an early morning hike. We searched, calling her name, tracing the trail with the forest map we'd brought. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no evidence that anyone had passed through. By mid-afternoon, Officer Kane appeared at the edge of the clearing. His uniform crisp. Hat tilted low. Sunglasses hiding every expression. I heard someone might be missing, he said. Voice calm, professional. Can I help with the search? We nodded, relieved. It seemed like the perfect solution. But as we worked with him, a creeping sense of wrongness began to gnaw at me. Every time I glanced at him, he seemed one step ahead. Not helping, but guiding, directing, predicting our moves. We eventually had to leave the forest without finding her. The missing camper would be the first of many, though none of us realized it yet. By the time I returned to town, I started noticing patterns. Stories in local forums. Hikers vanishing along the northern trail. Strangers in uniform appearing at odd hours, always near the edge of the forest. I dismissed some as coincidences, others as exaggerations, until I saw it with my own eyes. One evening, I was jogging near the trail entrance, the sky pink with sunset, when I felt a presence behind me. I froze. There he was, Officer Kane, standing a few meters away, perfectly still. I could see the reflection of the last rays of sun in his mirrored glasses. I didn't run. I didn't move. Something inside me screamed that any sudden action would draw his attention, and attention was the last thing I wanted. He tilted his head slightly, just enough for me to feel observed. Then he walked backward slowly, disappearing into the treeline. No Jerry. No sound except the soft crunch of pine needles. After that, I stopped taking the forest lightly. I started paying attention to where he was. And then I realized something terrifying. Every time someone disappeared, he had been nearby, watching, studying. I started connecting dots nobody else could see. The missing hikers, campers, teenagers, even townsfolk who had wandered into the forest for work or fun. They didn't vanish by accident. They were hunted. And Officer Kane, he wasn't just hunting. He was perfecting his method, luring people off the trails, using the uniform as camouflage, using authority to avoid suspicion. One night, I decided to follow him. I stayed hidden behind a thick grove of pines, heart hammering, camera ready. He walked slowly, checking his surroundings, stopping at an abandoned campsite. He crouched, inspected a set of footprints, and made marks in the dirt with a stick. The precision was terrifying. He wasn't lost. He was tracking someone, marking his path, planning. When he finally turned, I froze. His mirrored glasses reflected nothing. No eyes, no expression, no humanity. And in that moment, I realized, this man had no moral boundary. No empathy. He was pure predator, and the forest was his hunting ground. The forest isn't just trees and trails. It's shadows, it's silence, it's mistakes you can't undo. And now I knew who was controlling it. From that night on, I couldn't sleep. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves, sent me into panic. I started documenting everything, patterns, sightings, times, methods. But I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? And the worst part? He knew. Somehow, he always knew when someone was watching, when someone suspected. That's what made him unstoppable. I realized then that survival wasn't about running. It wasn't about hiding. It was about predicting him, learning his patterns, outsmarting him if possible. But the forest is large, and he is patient, and he always hunts. The morning after the missing camper, the forest felt heavier, as if the trees themselves were aware of what had happened. I couldn't shake the image of Officer Kane crouched in the dirt, tracing footprints and marking trails. Every step he took was methodical, precise, and terrifyingly confident. I knew then, he wasn't just a killer, he was a hunter in the truest sense, and the forest was his hunting ground. I started seeing patterns in disappearances. Northern Trail, the old pine grove, the abandoned ranger cabin. Every single missing person had been in the exact same areas. It wasn't random. Kane was orchestrating it, using the forest to isolate his prey, and he knew how to make people disappear without leaving a trace. I wanted to warn the town, but how do you tell people that the person they trust as a ranger is stalking them? It would sound insane. Yet the fear was real, creeping into every corner of my mind. Then I met Maya Rivers, a local journalist who had been following missing person reports for years. Her eyes lit up when I mentioned the Northern Trail. "I've been saying something's off about those disappearances," she said. "The authorities dismiss it as accidents or people wandering off. But there's a pattern. Always near the forest edges. Always hikers or tourists." We agreed to investigate. Carefully, quietly. Our first step was retracing the paths of the missing. We hiked during the day, mapping every trail, marking landmarks, observing the surroundings. Everything looked normal at first. Birds sang, sunlight filtered through the canopy. Squirrels darted across fallen logs. But when I closed my eyes and imagined nightfall, the forest transformed. Shadows thickened, the rustle of leaves sounded like distant footsteps, and every rustling branch could be the approach of the ranger. Maya brought a camera and motion sensors. We set them up at points where previous hikers had disappeared, hoping to catch anything unusual. It was painstaking work, and every creak of the underbrush made me jump. We didn't talk much. Our nerves left little room for conversation, but the silence between us was filled with tension, like the forest itself was holding its breath. That evening we spotted him. From a ridge above the trail, I saw Kane moving silently, checking the sensors we had laid out earlier, then adjusting one of the trail markers. He wasn't careless. He was meticulous, ensuring nothing would alert anyone to his presence. The mirrored glasses, wide-brimmed hat, and uniform gave him an unassailable facade, an authority figure who commanded obedience even when unseen. Maya froze behind me. "Is that him?" she whispered. I nodded. I couldn't speak. Every instinct screamed to run, but I knew if we did, he'd notice. Kane didn't need to chase. He could wait. He could stalk. He could plan. And the moment we exposed ourselves fully, he would act. We retreated carefully, documenting what we could, our hearts pounding like drums. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside the cabin, the wind rattling shingles, the creak behind us, the distant hoot of an owl, set my nerves on edge. I couldn't shake the image of his movements during the day, his careful adjustments to the environment. He treated humans like prey animals, and the forest like a controlled hunting ground. Over the next few days, the pattern grew clearer.